Mr. Robbins, members will be recognized by order of seniority for their 5 minutes of questioning, and I recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. A lot of the testimony, I think, hits the point that we can either be reactive when it happens, or we can actually be proactive now and start to address this issue. Some 25 years ago, some manned aircraft systems were used to perpetrate the largest terrorist attack in American history. My fear is that in the not-too-distant future, unmanned systems will perpetrate the largest terrorist attack in American history using drones, obviously. This is not something that's new to me. In 2017, I traveled to Israel. I was mayor of Miami-Dade County. We operate Miami International Airport. I went there with the explicit purpose of finding out from the Israelis what they did to protect their airports from drones. AI drones. I know we can protect ourselves from piloted drones, but AI drones. And their solution at the time was eagles, okay? I don't think we just have enough eagles to go around to do that. And so we haven't done much since then. And drone technology has just gotten worse, gotten more and more advanced, and I think the threat is expanding. We talk a lot about authorities, and so let me put an assumption to you. If an AI drone were to interfere or incur into an airport, say their airport space, would that airport have the authority to deal with it in a kinetic fashion, in a way to knock it down, in whatever way? If you can't do it through signal interruption, is there any way that airport, does it have the authority to bring it down, even though they may know it poses an unbelievable risk to their passengers?
No, sir.
We do not have that authority.
No, sir.
Okay. Does anybody have that authority?
In a very limited fashion, the Department of Defense, Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Energy have the authority to mitigate a rogue drone, but it's not a standing authority. They can't just be doing that all of the time. The way Congress has restricted the authority at the moment has to go through a very specific approval process and requires a very high-level signature, usually at like the deputy secretary level or higher.
Well, let me put an example to you. What happened in Ukraine, what the Ukrainians did to the Russians, it should be a wake-up call to us and a call to action. Because had that happened here in the United States, let's say a coordinated attack on major airports, yes, there would be loss of life. There would be injury. There would be, a lot of damage. But there's something else that we're not thinking about. It's the economic damage that it does. In Miami-Dade County alone, Miami International Airport is the single largest economic generator of that county. 40,000 people directly employed by that airport. 300,000 people indirectly employed by that airport. If you had that kind of attack in the United States and say across the world, you could ground air transportation to a halt. And that would cause irreparable economic damage. And so, I'm committed, and hopefully my colleagues on the other side of the aisle should be committed to confronting this head on. We need to do this now. Because like you said, I live in Miami, and we have things called hurricanes. Hurricanes aren't a question of if, it's a question of when. And I consider this threat by drones not to be a question of if, it's a question of when. The question is then, are we going to be proactive against it and try to mitigate that? Or are we going to say, oh my God, and then do all kinds of stuff after the fact? And so, what kind of legislation do we need in order to break through the barriers and actually give our state, local, and federal agencies the power that they need, the authorities that they need in order to protect the American public? Who'd be best to answer that? Mr. Walker?
Thank you, Chairman. I think I would challenge the presumption that the immediate need is to be able to develop a reactionary device or a reactionary element to the strategy. I think a more important component is that right now we don't have awareness of the airspace. So we don't necessarily know whether the drone and recently, as you know, in Miami, a drone was spotted at 4,000 feet above the Miami airport. The question was, what was that drone? Who was flying that drone? What was their mission? And so we can't automatically make the assumption that just because a drone is operating within 3 miles or 5 miles of an airport that is necessarily hostile. So we need to start with understanding what is in the airspace. Right now, we have no integrated airspace management solution that tells us who's operating, what platform they're operating, and what are their intents. And therefore, we also have no way to be able to authorize those flights and deauthorize those flights to be able to separate potentially hostile from non-hostile or friend from foe. So we have to start with, how do we identify what's in the airspace? Is it a threat? And then from that point, determine what we're going to authorize legislatively as the appropriate response to those threats. I think we have to start there first.
I will disagree with one point. I think we have to do all the above at the same time. We have to find out what's out there, but we'll also, if we know it's hostile, we need to take action against it. So my time is up, and I recognize the ranking member.